Welcome to the Level Up Life podcast. I'm your host, Scottie Hobbs, and today we're going to have a conversation with Jess and Michael. They founded and run a nationwide large-scale vegan food festival. Michael is a personal trainer and coaches men with a program called Anima Body. Jess runs events and coaches on social media full-time as they have built online and in-person communities since 2010. They have an amazing Instagram page called The League of Lovers. Jess lost 80 pounds and beat breast cancer. Michael and Jess, welcome to the show.
So we are Michael and Jessica. I am an event producer and a social media manager. I've hosted over 500 events across the country. They're all vegan, which is, I think, probably the most fun part of this, because typically you see these types of food events and they're full of all kinds of things that were super niche. And we host a whole page on Instagram called The League of Lovers, which is all about love and relationships and dating. And then you do something else entirely.
My name is Michael Feig. I have a company called Anima Body that helps men become empowered in not just fitness, but in their mental aspect in life, in their mindset. I believe that that's really where it all starts. Where the mind goes, the body follows. And those things that we learn to help us navigate through life a little bit easier, I think has transpired in not just my life, but in our relationship and in ultimately in League of Lovers. Because when you change your relationship with yourself, your relationship with the world around you changes, and the people in your life, and most importantly, the people dearest to you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That could be a whole hour conversation right there, just that topic alone. So
I could go hours on it.
I can tell. And did I hear you're a personal trainer as well?
Yep. Yeah, so that's where it all started. I made some big changes in my life. I was never like the popular jock in school. I never took care of myself growing up, and I made some big changes. And ultimately, it started off with, like everyone wants to. They want to lose fat, build muscle, right? It was vanity at the end of the day. But when you start to learn certain disciplines in your life, there is something that innately changes within you. And that's that relationship. That was the beginning of really changing the relationship with yourself, and then how that bleeds into the rest of your life.
Okay. That's beautiful. So it's fun to see. I'm just curious, when did you start your personal health and wellness journey? Because you didn't take care of yourself in the beginning, and then there was a point. What was that point?
Yeah, I really didn't. It was around 2009 was when I first started to dive into that. I was a recording engineer for a long time. So I was sitting in the studios for 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. I was eating just junk food all day. At the end of the day, I was trying to live an undeserved rock star life, right? And it just took a toll on my health. Physically, I felt like crap, and mentally it was even worse. So I started to dabble in it in 2009, making all the mistakes that everybody makes, like starving myself, doing all this cardio and not seeing the results I wanted, seeing results here and there, but eventually falling off the wagon and getting all the way back and doing the yo-yo thing. Ultimately, what changed was finding balance in my life. And that took some years. I was doing it on my own. I didn't have a trainer. I just dove headfirst and just tried to learn as much as I could. That's why I tell anybody I work with, a little bit of curiosity goes a long way. You just, in the world today, there's so much information out there, and it's hard to know who to listen to, what to listen to. And you just kind of got to cut through the BS at times. And that's what I like to help people do.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I was listening to Ed Milet's podcast this morning. He was saying the same thing, kind of. Yeah, he was like,
I love Ed Milet. The Power of One More.
Yeah.
Did you read that book?
Yeah, I've read that book.
Yep.
Of course.
It's a great book.
Yeah, he was talking about everybody has a voice out there telling you what to do, what not to do. And he's like, you just really need to find 2 or 3 people that have a life and do life the way that you want, and just kind of dial in on that and not try to take in everything. And then obviously your own intuitions too.
100%. And as you grow, you start to gain your own instincts and intuitions. But yeah, follow the people that have what you want. That's exactly what it is.
Beautiful. Now, Jess, tell us a little bit about you. So you run some festivals, do a lot of online stuff. Did I hear that you did some like American Gladiator thing before too? Like, tell us
Yeah,
about your journey. Like,
I've got some really interesting markers on my timeline. So in 2008, I was a contestant on American Gladiators. That's actually brought me out to California, where we live now. I met my now ex-husband on that show. He was a producer. I was a contestant. It was very taboo. You're not supposed to do things like that. But we had two kids. We got married, and then we started festivals. So I was doing these events called Vegan Street Fair, and I still do. We've been doing these now for 10 years. They are the largest vegan festival in the world. We block off like a mile worth of streets in LA and bring out 200 vendors. So many people show up. It's just a party. It's just a party. It's like you don't have to be vegan to enjoy it. And that's like my latest and biggest passion. But we got divorced in 2020. I led the single life for a little bit, but here's the fun part. I was 200 pounds for about 8 years. And in 2020, during COVID, I was like, I'm done living this life. And I lost 80 pounds in about 10 months. I
wow.
really stuck to it. I was like 2 a days at the gym with a trainer. We hadn't met yet. And just, took my life back because I was miserable. I was very unhappy. And we met in 2023. And 2 weeks later, I found out I had breast cancer, which was like, what? I just started dating this person. Like, he's not going to stick around. And I told him about it, and we're still here, and I am now cancer free. So, I mean, we could talk about that maybe forever too.
It's one of my favorite stories to talk about when it comes to our conception story. Because when she told me that, you know, selfishly, I had this thought of like, I'm trying to get to know this girl. Like, how is this going to get in the way of us, right? Because she's going to obviously have to take care of herself, and she's going to get surgery. She's going to have to recover, and ultimately, I'm like, okay, how do I show up? Because I knew like it was very quickly when we met. The day we met, when I left her after the conversation on our first date, I was like, I feel like I've known this person a long time. Um, so when she told me she had breast cancer, I was like, this can't get in the way. Now, understandably, that's a big piece of information for someone to get when you're meeting a stranger. Like, and it's understandable for someone to be like, that's too much. Good luck to you. But for me, I was like, how do I show up? And when the day came, she had her surgery. Took her into the hospital. I was there when they wheeled her in, and we're still here. But it was definitely an interesting way to start the relationship because it was about like a week or two in.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 Wow. Well,
So we
that's
dealt with some pretty heavy stuff like pretty early on.
Yeah.
yeah. When you go through hard things and you can go through them together, it kind of builds a deeper bond and strength, right?
Yeah. There's this idea that a great first date is something exhilarating or something dangerous because when you feel like you've gotten through something with somebody, it increases that feeling of closeness and growing that bond with somebody. So that was kind of our thing. It definitely pushed us into something that was a bit deeper early on, but it lends itself to that idea of something dangerous and big can lead to something something
Beautiful.
solid. Yeah.
Something beautiful and solid. I love it. As solid as that bicep that I see popping out right there, Michael.
Oh,
Gee.
I'll put that away.
So, a lot of times we talk about what it takes to be successful in business or successful in a relationship. You guys meet, you have this difficult news early on, a week and a half, that's very early on. And like I had to call my now wife for 2 months before she ever went on a date with me. So a week and a half in, that's pretty quick when I think about how our relationship started on just phone calls. So has this year and a half just been the most beautiful thing that you've ever experienced in your life? Just all uphill joy and happiness?
The outcome is, um, look, every relationship, if you go into any relationship thinking it's just going to be, unicorns and rainbows, you're going to be let down, right? People people can be messy, right? We're fallible. Um, Even when we try and do our best, we're not always performing at our best. Sometimes we're cranky for no reason, or tired, or hangry, or whatever. All these things can come out. That's okay. It's okay that people are messy. I believe that as long as we clean it up together, everything's fine. And that takes a responsibility from both parties, right? Checking your side of the street, um, while also setting boundaries and vocalizing things that may be on your mind and having some challenging conversations. Like, this is all part of it. Some things are more challenging than others, but every relationship, I mean, is gonna go through some challenging moments, and we've had our fair share, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. Every time you get through a challenging moment, there's always growth on the other side. It's the same thing as working out, right? In order to build your muscles, you have to be in the gym and you have to put your muscles through some sort of resistance, right? Some sort of challenge in order for them to grow after the fact. It's the same thing with a relationship. It's the same thing with building character in yourself. We don't grow as people when we're comfortable on the couch eating potato chips. We grow when there's some sort of adversity, some sort of resistance. And it's important to lean into that, because if you avoid those moments in a relationship, now you're not really taking care of it. You're not really addressing the issue, and you're not really connecting over those moments. But those are beautiful moments to connect over.
The short answer is no, it was not a beautiful uphill situation. Yeah. It was beautiful in moments and tumultuous at others.
Sure.
We broke up. We had a really big breakup. And it was very scary for me because I had to dig into some really deep childhood wounds that I had that was causing tension between the two of us. I was getting in my way. I couldn't look past my own traumas to be able to let love in. And I think in this society, it's so easy to look at something like that and go, it's just not working, I'm going to move on. But the reality is, if you don't deal with your own inner demons, whatever those triggers are bringing up for you, you're going to repeat the same thing over and over again with new people. So I had to start, when we broke up, I had to really look into myself and go, what is happening here and why? Because usually today's triggers are not today's triggers. They're past wounds coming up. And that's what's actually affecting you in your relationships. And once I started to dig into that and meet my inner child and go to therapy and do the self work, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe like the things that I contributed to in this relationship. And there was a lot of growth there. I think we're on the other side of that. We are on the other side.
And we should also say that, these triggers, these, personality quirks, these things that get the best of us sometimes, they don't just go away completely, right? Or maybe they change, maybe there's different ones that come up, but we also need to allow them to come up at times, right? As a partner, I believe that as partners, we have two responsibilities. One is to take care of our own traumas, our own reactions, and own that and be accountable for that. The other one is to create a safe space for our partner's traumas to also show up at times and not just dip at the first sight or react to their triggers at the first sight of it happening. Because we are human, we are fallible, they are going to pop up. So we need to be able to create a safe space, and then there's a moment to talk about it and address it. And if both people are doing that, right? If I get reactive one day and she gives me the space and it doesn't turn into like this big, barn burner, then we can address it later on. I can be accountable and be like, I really didn't like the way I acted. I can apologize, hold myself accountable for that. And now you've got progress. Now you've got growth in the relationship. So both people are doing those two things, owning their own, their own triggers and traumas and creating a safe space for the other persons to show up, you have something harmonious.
Yeah. I'm listening to that. I'm like, you guys are on a good track just a year and a half in. So
This is what this ultimately comes down to the mindset, right? It's just another layer, another piece of the pie of life, right? This transcends into all relationships, business, your relationship with yourself, with your friends. It just becomes very important and maybe even a little bit more difficult when it comes to something a little bit more intimate, like a romantic relationship, because that and family too. Like your spouse and your family, they're always going to be the ones that are able to push your buttons more than anybody else. You spend more time with them. They know you better than anybody else. So those are going to be probably the most challenging ones. But
yeah,
this stuff is just really important to us, just navigating life a little bit easier.
yeah. And when you can understand that life is a little bit more beautiful when you're not as reactive. So we've been married almost 19 years, and I remember the early years just being like, why is she like this? Why is she doing this? And it would always be like putting it outside of myself,
Yeah.
or not looking at like, okay, what is causing her pain or to react like that? And how can I just be a friend because something's definitely not right. Like something's not
Right.
right inside. And I have those moments too. So it's like I would want someone to treat me like that, but oftentimes I think in relationships people don't do that. They're like, "What's wrong with them?" or "Why are they treating
Exactly.
me like that?" Take it inside.
You switch it from it being a victim mentality, a more self-centered approach, to being more compassionate for what she's going through, right? Maybe sometimes it could be something as simple as like she had a tough day. There's some stressor at work she hasn't mentioned yet, whatever it might be. But just having a little bit of compassion for the other person and not taking it personal. Because oftentimes it's not. And they're just sometimes we're a little, little fussy, like fussy little children sometimes. I mean, it's as simple as that, and yeah, just be mindful of it.
Yeah, I could be a fussy little 43-year-old sometimes too. And so I have to remember that.
Yeah, all of us.
So I wanted to ask a lot of business questions because you're running like the world's biggest, vegan festival. You're a personal trainer and you have your own brand where you work with men. But I want to stay on this topic, maybe because it's Valentine's Day, we'll stay here just a little bit longer. What would you say to somebody that's barely getting into a brand new relationship? What are some the things that you would recommend that they focus on or look for in a partner or in the start of a relationship?
What they look for in a partner is really going to be up to them,
Yeah.
and that's maybe the first step is knowing what you want. And each maybe failed relationship or failed dating, you get to learn a little bit more about what you want. So maybe pay attention to those experiences. And then don't overthink it. Don't read into every little, you know, oh, he's not texting me back, so it's taking too long. What is he doing? Take it easy in the beginning. If it feels too complicated in the beginning, there's a reason. If they're not showing interest or they're playing these games, then they're not interested. If somebody is interested, they're going to show it. It's that simple. It's that simple. And if they are playing games, if they're interested and they are playing games, then is that really someone you want to have, a great relationship with? Anyways, is it someone that you see yourself building something of value?
And I'll add that I think we step into relationships sometimes not really being aware of what it is that we actually want out of people. Some of us want a relationship because we're lonely. Some of us want a relationship because we're getting older. Some of us want a relationship for all these other reasons, other than the fact that there are people out there that can enter your life and make your life better. And I think if you're stepping into it, being aware that you're a whole human being and that you're working towards being as whole as you can possibly be, and you're looking to meet another whole human being and merging those two lives together, I think that that is the start of something really special. when I was younger, I would get into relationships to be like, that person's going to complete me or save me or whatever these tropes are that society tells us we're supposed to look for. I mean, Disney, don't even get me started, right? Like every single Disney movie on the planet is about this idea that, well, maybe, the later ones aren't, but it's about this idea that the princess can't be whole until she meets her prince. But I think that there's something more magical about knowing that you are your own wholeness without another person, and this person steps into your life and just adds to it.
Yeah, that's exactly exactly it. It's you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm looking for someone to complete me." I think it's the wrong way of looking at it. Look for you complete yourself, but look for the person that complements you.
Yeah.
So switch out that word complete with complement, and that's a good way to go.
That's a beautiful reminder that you are complete yourself and that someone is there to help you become better or complement
Right.
you.
Yeah.
I love that. So tell me, so you guys have an Instagram page, and I want to make sure by the end of this, everybody knows all your Instagram pages, how to connect with you guys. But tell me about the League of Lovers, since we're on this topic right now. What's the goal of that? What inspired you guys to start that? What's the goal, message, and purpose of that page?
So originally, the League of Lovers was like a little podcast that we had put together for YouTube.
Right.
We were shooting little videos every week, just talking about dating and relationships and questions that would pop up. And we had our Instagram page that we were populating with snippets from that YouTube. And it wasn't really doing too much. And then slowly but surely, because I've been doing social media now for over 10 years, and I have built pages up to 180,000 followers and more, I decided to take the page and sort of do something different with it since we had stopped doing the podcast. So it was really about like these love letters that I was writing to him. It was about how I would feel every single day in his presence and in his energy and with who he was as my partner, and just accepting me for who I was and showing me that, there is real love out there. And I just thought it was something that other people should see, because especially in this society, and you don't have to worry about this, Scottie, because you've been together with your wife forever. But let me tell you about the dating scene these days. It is very challenging. And as someone who stepped back into the dating scene in 2020, I was like, dating apps? What? This is so weird. And we live in this world where it's very easy for people to be like, I don't like the way that person chews, swipe. I don't like the way that person wears their hat, swipe. But really, there's so many people out there that don't live that way. They commit to people. They find someone that they really want to build a life with, and they set themselves up to build something magical and special. And so we wanted to give people hope with the League of Lovers. We wanted to build essentially this League of Lovers, this collective of people that believes in love and wants love and embodies love, exudes love, because everybody needs love. And I think that if we give more of it, receive more of it, are able to recognize how we are showing up for other people through this same exact container, I think that the world would be a better place. So the League of Lovers is really just a place to share your love and share these digital love letters with the people that you care about the most.
I think that's what was such a surprise to me, was how many people related to the words that she was writing. In the beginning, we had a little bit of traction, and then all of a sudden we had a post hit 1 million. I'm like, okay, so people like that one. Then we got another 1 million, and then 2 million, and 4. And like now, a lot of our posts, we see people sharing it with their loved ones left and right, all across the world. And that felt pretty amazing, that the words that she's writing, these love letters to me, that other people get to share to their partners and the people that they love, because they want to express the same sentiment. And that was a surprise to me. It felt amazing. And I think it's really, really cool to see that, and to see how many people are into it. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. That's how I found you guys. I saw one of those. I was like, that's beautiful. I have to use that. And I used it in a post, and that's how we got connected. So
Yeah.
I connect with it as well. I was like, people need to hear this message. So I think that's beautiful. And I think it's even more beautiful in today's day and age when everybody, not everybody, the majority of people are criticizing or judging or putting up negativity or any of those things. To have such a beautiful message, I think it's really needed.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of what she was talking about, giving people hope, because one of the things we noticed, some of the people, she'll write her love letter to me, and some people will relate, be like, "Oh, I found this and I'm so happy." Others, they have a different story. They'll have a much more sad story attached to that sentiment. And I know when she sees that, it breaks her heart, and she wants to let people know that that's not that's not always the case. Sometimes that's our experience with one person in our life or in some of our relationships, but there's always more to be had, and she just wants to show people that.
Yeah. Well, you guys are beautiful people spreading love. I love that.
It's fun.
Well, I want to ask you guys a question. So someone on here, you guys are doing multiple things, like we've talked about, festivals and personal training and coaching men. So let's say someone out there, they want to start helping other people, providing a service or a product, and they want to earn some money doing that. Whether it's like just jumping all in and building it, or working a full-time job and doing that on the side. What advice would you give them to somebody that wants to start building something?
Um, this is actually part of what I do as well. This is another part of my extensive resume is I coach people on their social media businesses because there are so many folks out there that have a message that want to show other people, this side of a business. And I'm speaking about Ali, but there's people who have a message. And my recommendation always is figure out your bandwidth first, right? What is it that you're trying to do with what this purpose is? And how much time do you have to do it? And what is it that you want to put forth? Because there's multiple avenues to reaching that goal, whether it's an Instagram page, a YouTube channel that's a little bit more involved, whether it's setting up, a funnel for a coaching business, whether it's coming up with a portfolio because you're doing content for people, whatever the case is, decide first how much bandwidth you have, and then reverse engineer your goals with how you can get to them. Because, I have people that have these grand visions and they're like, I want to do these things. And I'm like, that's lovely. How much time do you have? And they're like, oh yeah, I don't really have much. So we got to scale that back. We've got these grand visions and that's all lovely and you want to have that. But I think that if you're starting a business, especially if you want to teach somebody something, you don't have to be the best at it. People think they've got to have all these certifications and they need to know every single thing about a subject. There are people far less qualified than you are doing the very thing you're trying to do, and they're making lots of money at it, but you're holding yourself back because you're not perfect yet. So don't let perfection be the enemy of progress, right? If you have a vision, if you have an idea, just do it. Go for it. Set your mind to it and go. Whether it's an Instagram page like we started, we grew from 212 followers to like 15,000 in 6 months, just from doing what we were doing consistently every single day, pop, 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 one post after the other. Because we had this vision, but we didn't, not do it because we were having a rough week as partners, right? In our relationship, it wasn't like, okay, now we step back. We just hit the paint really hard. And I think that a lot of people sometimes forget that. Like they have to be persistent and they have to want to get to their goals and they just need to do it. Don't stop. Don't feel like you need to be perfect. Just go.
And I was going to say something you touched on is imposter syndrome, right? Some people, if they want to get into a business where they're coaching or teaching somebody, they might have doubts and go, I don't know enough, or I haven't been doing this long enough. You only need to know 10% more than your student to teach them. So keeping that in mind, there's always someone out there that knows less than you do. And then as you teach, the best way to learn is to teach. So I would say, because I got held back with that. I don't know how many people don't suffer from imposter syndrome. Even when there's years down the road of doing it, you still kind of sometimes you might get hit with a question like, oh, I don't know the correct answer here. Like I might have to look this one up. But you just learned a little bit from it. So just overcoming imposter syndrome, not letting that get in the way, and and finding your true voice, right? Because I think the other thing that I struggled with fitness is such a saturated market, right? It's so saturated. So I would say with like everybody knows this already. Everybody knows this information. It's been done left and right. But what hasn't been done is the way I say it, my perspective on it, right? And that's unique. And people will fall in love with that because they trust you and they want to hear from you.
Yeah, I love that. So what I'm hearing is you have to believe in yourself that you're able to learn, that you don't have to know everything or be perfect, and stay consistent in those actions.
Yeah,
Yep, nailed it.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
And scene.
So I love that. I was in this space, so I'm helping people with health and fitness for over 15 years as well, and mindset and building businesses. And I was working with someone who trains high school athletes to be elite athletes, helps connect to college. So he has a niche in that. And I was working with him on his own personal goals because he'd kind of fallen off of his own health and wellness, helping, hundreds of high school athletes. And he wanted to lose some weight, and he was hitting the stair climber every single day and working on his meal plan. And I was like, dude, you got to work out with me. He's like, no, I'm just gonna hit this treadmill. And I was like, when you build muscle, you actually burn more calories. He's like, what? I didn't understand that. And is in his 30s as an athlete, and so sometimes we think everybody knows everything that we might have learned in our life. So sometimes repeating the very basic, simple things to new people over and over, and not have to try to
Yep.
find the next thing to teach the same people over and over.
We were just talking about that exact same thing the other day. What, especially when it comes to fitness, what I think is common sense, I realize it's not that common, which is sometimes I have to check myself because with the internet, I'm like, it's everywhere. All the information is out there, right? But for some reason, it just doesn't stick for everybody all the time, or they just haven't come across it, right? So I have to constantly remind myself and be okay talking about the basics because
Yeah.
my audience, in many cases, don't know the basics, and that's okay. But everybody grows, everybody gets there.
Yep.
Yeah. I have the same problem when I'm doing like vegan stuff on my vegan street fair page, which is another page that I run that is the festival. But it's very easy for me as a 15-year vegan to talk about, macros and ethics and, factory farms. People just want to know legitimately how to get their protein. That's it. And that's probably the most obnoxious thing any vegan can hear over and over and over again. But that's the basics. And so to your point, that's another really good thing. If folks are out there listening to this and they're trying to start a business, keep it simple. You don't have to go to, a graduate program for people. Just keep it to 101. And I think that still resonates with enough people. We always think like it's too, it's not enough. I've got to teach them all these levels of things. I don't really need to know why certain exercises do certain things. I just need to get into the gym. So tell me how to do that, right? Like if we're using that as an example.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, what you were talking about, vegans wanting to know where their protein comes from. Omnivores, they also want to know where their protein comes from, right? But for me, that seems like common sense.
no-brainer, yeah.
But people go, what's the best protein, right? They're starting with the simplest thing. So it doesn't matter who they are, where they're coming from. It's just keeping it simple.
Yeah, that was a good reminder for me. So I've never done vegan. I was a vegetarian for 2 years when I was working on healing my liver through some things. And as you were saying that, I was like, if I wanted to be vegan, what would I need to know? And I was like, that was my first question is like, okay, what protein source? Like when I was doing vegetarian, it'd be a very similar thing. And then when you started listing like farms, and all that, I was like, I didn't even think of any of that stuff. So, so yeah, so I could see that.
Yeah.
And for the record, I am not vegan. which is oftentimes people will ask us, well, how does that work? It
Yeah.
works because it's a non-issue. Why should it not work?
It's not an
Right?
issue for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
So, but
Michael
I
and she's
know,
Jess.
That's
yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
What does it matter?
Hmm.
Right. But for some people, it does matter. And I think that's okay. If
Yeah.
someone is vegan and they want someone who's vegan also, nothing wrong with that. Right. But for us, it was just never an issue. We eat together, we go to restaurants together, and no problem.
We'll sometimes meet up for lunch and like bring our own food and have almost the exact same meal
Yeah.
with different protein sources. It's very crazy. There was one
Yeah.
day I had like a baked sweet potato with sauteed
Yeah.
veggies and tofu. Did I
You
have
had,
tofu or
no,
lentils?
it was the fried like faux chicken.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So like fried pieces of chicken, like soy or whatever, soy chicken. And then he had the exact same thing, but sliced sweet potatoes, sauteed veggies, and chicken.
Actual chicken.
So it's like, look, like it's all doable. It's all doable, especially as people who are health conscious. We are mindful of what we're eating, but not everybody is, and I wasn't always either. I wasn't always either.
And there's never been any pressure on her end. She's never tried to turn me vegan or try and get me to go vegan. None of that ever, or vice versa. It was just it's.
It's a
I
respect thing,
think
I think.
I think for both of us, we just never really cared what the other person is eating, what we do on our for our own bodies.
Yeah. As long as you're making choices that are good and healthy for your spirit and body that you
Yeah, I
align
think
with.
ultimately, like the for I think both of us, as long as we're making healthy choices and not just kind of just eating whatever we want all the time and letting ourselves go, I think otherwise it doesn't matter to us.
Yeah. I like that. So you guys have been building things for a while. You're working on this beautiful relationship you guys are creating. And either of you can answer this question, or both of you separately. What's a hardship in your life that taught you the most?
Just in general,
In
like
general, yeah.
on a personal level.
Yeah, on a personal level, it doesn't have to be in your relationship. It could be what's a hardship that taught you the most in your life?
I'll go first because I think mine is pretty easy and palpable. Um, so when I was working as a recording engineer, I said I was living an undeserved rock star life. I meant it. So I got involved in substances and drug addiction, and that took me out. Right. That really brought me to the lowest point in my life. And the biggest lesson I learned from that was once the substances were gone, I was left with myself, all the things I've been feeling that I've been trying to escape from with all the substances. So that was the beginning of that internal work, really understanding what I was running away from, the feelings I was running away from, why I was having those feelings in the first place. And that was the beginning of that journey and really realizing that my life is dictated by how I manage my perspectives, right? How how I respond to the outside world. The outside world doesn't have an effect on how I act, but how I respond internally will dictate my actions. You can have two people that respond completely different to one situation. For instance, one person loses a job and they crumble under the pressure and they spiral. Another person, they can lose a job and this is uncomfortable and maybe it's tough, but they go, okay, what do I need to do to climb out of this? Right? And they can just navigate through it a little bit easier. So I used to be the former, right? But getting out of that, getting out of the drug addiction was something that really allowed me to start living my life again, obviously, and really learning who I was. And I wouldn't change it for anything. I don't I really love who I've become today and who I'm continuing to become. So I don't regret anything I did in my past because I don't know if I would have ended up in the same place because it taught me some really valuable lessons that make my life easier today. It's not something I would suggest to anybody. Don't
Yeah.
purposely go through that because there's other ways to get there. I just know that that was my road and it was a big lesson learned in that.
Yeah, that was your path and your journey. So you said
Yeah.
you used to be the former, someone that would have spiraled out and versus change. So how did that shift happen? Because someone might be listening to this and they're like, "Hey, I'm that person. Like I lose my job and I'm out of commission, or someone breaks up with me, it's the end of the world, or whatever." So how did that shift happen?
um, Taking responsibility, getting honest with myself, like rigorously honest, and also showing myself a little bit of grace and compassion. So I had a lot of self-loathing. So when something happened in my life, I wasn't blaming other people. I was always blaming myself, and I felt really bad about myself. I was no good, not good enough, right? So there was a lot of that. And um, I would when you're faced with something that's difficult, right? Um, I lost my train of thought. I lost my point. Um, sorry, I got stuck.
Oh, that's all right. That
Yeah,
happens to me all the time.
yeah. This part we might want to edit out.
Just leave it. This is real.
No,
No,
yeah.
that's real life. Yeah.
No,
So yeah, so
I lost my train of thought.
you're in this space where you spiral out before and you don't know, you blame yourself. You were saying you internalize things and take blame for everything.
Yes.
How did
So
that
there used
shift
to be a
into
lot of yes, there used to be a lot of self-loathing, but it's taking responsibility for what happens in my life. Like I realize that I can't manage anything else around me. The only thing I can manage in my life is my response to it. I can't control anything outside of me. I can't control people, places, and things. I can only control how I respond. And once I can do that, then I can shift my experience in life. So one of my favorite quotes is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? My dad is a good example. My dad's getting older, and as I get older, we had a period where we would butt heads a lot, right? And I constantly pushed up against it. I wanted him to change. Like, you treat me like a child all the time, these are the things that were getting in my way. But I realized I go, listen, he's getting older. He's set in his ways. I can't change him. The only thing I can change is how I see him, how I view him, my perspective of him, right? So at one point I was like, he's old. I'm just gonna let him be old. And if he does something to annoy me, I'm not gonna let it upset me. I'm not gonna let it ruffle my feathers. I'm just going to love him and show compassion for him, right? I'm not gonna worry about why he's like that. That's not my business. But in that, I've changed. He didn't change, but my experience of him changed, and therefore my relationship with him changed. So taking responsibility for what happens on the inside and not blaming other people and other situations and other outside circumstances is the first place I would look. But that takes honesty with yourself and responsibility. And a lot of times people don't want to do that. But that is probably one of the most valuable things I've brought into my life.
that is a valuable lesson. And it was making me think about earlier in this conversation with a spouse as well. If we take that, it's with every human, if we can just look at them for who they are, they're all different, have their quirks, their personalities, and just understand that we can't change people and that we can just see them, the way that we see them. I love that. What was that quote that you said? The way that we look at somebody is the way I have to write
That
that one down.
when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
There you go. Beautiful. I love that one. Jess, do you want to share anything? Any
Yeah.
hardships that taught you something in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few, with breast cancer and also, COVID. I almost lost my business in COVID. It was like we lost $250,000 because the event was canceled, like right before it was scheduled for, and that was a big one. But I think if I'm being very honest with myself, the biggest thing that changed me was very recent, and it was the breakup between Michael and I. And I know that that seems like too recent to have been really impactful, but the reason we broke up had so much to do with things that I needed to explore about myself. I'm almost 43 years old, and this is the first time that I've ever sat with myself and explored why it is that I always thought it was other people doing things to me, right? I did not have the capacity to look within myself and go, what am I contributing to this, and why? What was my past like that created this version of me today that's causing so much friction? I always wanted to blame other people. This was like a lifelong thing. And I was very stuck in fight, flight, freeze. And for anybody out there that understands traumas, you know what I'm talking about. Um, Learning about what that is on a brain level changed everything for me, because now it's not simply how I look at Michael and our relationship and how I'm able to respond to him without feeling attacked, offended, insulted, triggered. It's everywhere. It's my children, saying or doing something, and me having the wherewithal to take a breath and not react right away. We react so quickly so often because we feel some perceived slight, but it's like kind of like what you were saying. It's the same thing.
It is. It's taking responsibility for what you're feeling inside.
Yeah.
Right.
And not reacting to the thing that's happening to you. And with that, your perspective on the world changes. But I think because it was the first time I ever saw it, and 4 decades into this life I have, it wasn't even a light bulb. It was so much bigger than that. It was like the sun shone upon me for the first time in my life. And it's very difficult to describe, but especially when you're dating, and this is something else that, it can just sort of take back to the League of Lovers idea, which is if you are in a relationship and you are triggered, it's not something to be afraid of. It's a warning sign. There's something there to look into. You're uncomfortable about something. That doesn't mean something's wrong with your relationship. That simply means there's something that you have to look at within yourself, right? This is a mirror. Your partners are mirrors for you. They get to show you things about yourself that you might not like. But the best relationships are the ones that show you that mirror, where you have the ability to go, I don't like what that looks like, but I've got to deal with it. And if you can deal with it, then you're on the road, I think, to a very healthy place, not just in relationship, but just in life in general.
Yeah. And it also touches on that idea of leaning into adversity, right? This experience for her stemmed from a very challenging event. And for most people, that growth is going to come from something challenging, some sort of resistance. It goes full circle back to what we were talking about. Some are bigger than others, right? But I mean, for me, it was drug addiction, right? That was what got me to open up my eyes and shift my perspective on how I navigate life. From here, I willingly put myself through little adversities when I can, right? The gym's an easy one, right? Certain disciplines, working on sleep hygiene, these all build character and they all stem growth. And growth through adversity is the only way that I've ever seen it. I just don't ever see people growing when there isn't some sort of resistance. Even sitting and reading a book, right? Like sometimes that can be challenging. Like sometimes when I'm reading, it's boring, right? Or I'm getting tired. I'm like, I gotta finish this chapter. It's a little bit of resistance. There's resistance there, right? So
I kind of shared a message this morning. I did a leg day, and like I made a decision before my leg day. I was like, I'm going to do the hardest leg day I've ever done in my life. And I had written it out and how much time I was going to spend. And I had two more sets of three sets of different moves. And I was like, I'm done. Like I dry heaved a little bit, you know that feeling. I took my AirPods out. I was getting ready to go grab my coat from the little cubby. I took like two steps. I was like, no, like you got to
Yeah.
finish what you started. And I went through that adversity and I felt so much better on the other side, even though the dry heaving continued a little bit.
Yeah. Well, see, but that'll pass.
Yeah.
That'll pass. But you feel better internally, right? Because you would have been, had you not done it, there would have been a little bit of that, man, I could have done it. I wish I could have done it. There's a little bit, right? Could have beaten yourself up for it. Now you don't have to do that. Now you get to feel it tomorrow when that soreness
But
hits
I
you.
can't sit down on the couch when I got to do
Yeah,
that
exactly.
close catch yourself
Yeah,
sit.
exactly. It'll be
I
the
know,
gift that keeps giving.
I know that one. That's awesome. Um, so what kind of challenges have you guys faced in running business? I know you mentioned, Jess, that you lost $250,000 when COVID came. What other kind of challenges have you faced or would someone face in a business that might not be expected?
Market shifts. For us, COVID was a big one. It kind of taught me that anything could happen at the snap of a finger. When COVID hit, all events were shut down for years.
Mhm.
And when events came back, they were not at their full tilt. They were a shadow of themselves. People now, they don't really come out as much anymore because they're accustomed to staying home. So they're like, well, I don't really like people. I don't really want to be around people. And I could just order food on Postmates. Why would I go to a food festival? Right. And so I think that something to keep in mind as a business owner is understanding market shifts in your specific industry and having the wherewithal to pivot. Because if you can't pivot around the things that are happening, you're going to fail. And most successful businesses have that ability to look at something and either be a forward thinker or look at something coming in advance and shift how they're going to do their business so that they avoid the pitfalls of whatever it may be. So for me, because events were a little bit less busy, I had to focus more heavily on my social media presence. And now my social media presence is, I mean, it is epic. Hundreds of thousands of views every single week on vegan food because people aren't just coming out readily like they used to. So I think that if any business owner is looking for like, this thing isn't working, you have to know when to quit, but you also have to know when to pivot. And if you don't know how to pivot or you don't know where to pivot, you're gonna hit challenges. So just be sure to always be mindful and cognizant of what's going on in your specific industry so that you can get around it.
I love that. And do you do both? How do you get like seek guidance for those things? Is it all inside, like internally, like paying attention? Do you guys have like friends or accountability business partners or masterminds? What kind of things do you like? How do you know to do those things? Because someone could be sitting there alone and be like, do I quit or do I pivot? And then get
Right,
caught in some circle. Like what advice do
right.
you give to somebody?
I think it's important to have folks in your network that can offer you some solid advice, but you've got to talk to people that have done it. Like I would talk to other event organizers before I would talk to a restaurant owner, for example, right? They're two different niches. Um, I think a lot of what it is for me is intuition. It's really sitting with myself and like, am I in flow? Am I in alignment? Am I truly following this thing and why? Because if I'm following a path and it is leading me to certain death, I need to know intuitively that it's the wrong way to go. But if I feel like I haven't given it 100% and I feel like I'm leaving something on the table, then that's my gut reaction to just keep going. But you do need to lean into people who are people you respect, people who do this type of work, people that have successful businesses. If you're operating in isolation in any business, I mean, you could probably speak to this more than me, Scottie, because you deal with this probably on a daily basis with business. But it's like there are people that you can create a silent cohort with that you can bounce ideas off of that go, hey, you have my best interest at heart. Where do I go from here? So I think it's a combination. It's a combination of like what your intuition is telling you, what the market's telling you, what people that are familiar with the situation maybe have some insight on. But I think never quit until you know it's ready, until you know you're ready to quit. Like don't just quit because you're like, I'm just,
Done.
I'm not giving it my all and I don't want to anymore. Quit because it's like, I've done everything I could and now I can quit. You know what I mean?
Never quit on a bad day.
That's a great quote. Put
It's
that
not
on a shirt. I will buy it.
never quit on a bad day. You were making me think about, I recently had to make a pivot with my business. And
Mm,
there was people that I talked to that didn't have an interest in what I decided to do next with my life. And it was just so powerful to talk with them and get perspective from them. I remember going to the gym the next day and there was people that I see all the time and just being like real with people sometimes. I think sometimes we put on a face. Like one guy's like, "How you doing?" I was like, "Man, I didn't sleep last night at all. Like I lost my business of 15 years." And I didn't do it for pity. I was just like, it's just an older man. He's like, "Oh, you'll make it through." And I didn't know anything about him other than him and his wife's name. And he's like,
mm,
"Man, when I moved from California, like I had this business." And he told me about how he lost a business of like a $500,000. And he's like, and now I'm an electrician. My kid works with me, and I'm super happy. My kids are happy. He's like, "You're gonna make it through it." And it was just sometimes just connecting too on your vulnerabilities and where you're at. You realize, okay, I'm not the only person going through something hard right now. And I think a lot of
mm.
times people go through things hard thinking they're the only one going through something like that.
That that reminds me of something that I try and remind myself when going through these difficult times. It's really hard to see in the moment when we're going through it. But I like to remind people when they're going through it, like that wasn't the first hard thing you went through, right, Scotty?
No,
That was
absolutely not.
there's plenty of others before that, right?
Yeah.
You're here today. So each one of those things you've survived, right? So whatever life brings you in the future, whatever next challenge that might feel like the world is on your shoulders, the weight of the world is on your shoulders, you're going to get through that too, right? You'll always survive onto the next thing. You're here, I'm here, she's here, and it's kind of hard to see when you're stuck in the mud, but I try and remind myself of that every single time something like that happens. Whatever it was in the past, I survived that. I'm here today. I'll survive this one too.
I'm a survivor. We'll remember that.
Yes.
You made
Yes.
me think of like one other thing that I do is perspective, and you mentioned perspective earlier before.
Yeah.
Is just I don't know where I heard it before, but there's millions of people that would happily trade places with you. And
Yeah.
and that
Oh,
was one of the
wow.
biggest things that came into my mind too. I was like, I have a home that's paid for. I have five beautiful, healthy children. I have a wife that loves me. I have great parents and siblings. I was like, there's tens of millions of people that would happily trade positions with me today.
Yeah. It's gratitude, right?
Yeah.
I saw somebody the other day. You know, it might have been yesterday. I saw this post online, and he's like, when you're in the shower, just remember that 100 years ago, nobody in the world had this luxury. When you're taking a shower in warm water, 100 years ago, people didn't have that. It's like it's a small little thing that we take for granted today, right? But you can scale that up to so many things. Everything that you have in your life and we lose sight of it, but you can be grateful for all of it. And like you said, there's somebody out there that would switch for your life in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Mm, it's a good
It's a good
perspective.
reminder.
Yeah.
Well, we're about ready to wrap this up. So I want to ask you guys each to share maybe just a little piece of wisdom or a piece of advice to wrap it up about, just someone out here listening. Like if you could just go tell a younger version of yourself something, what would you say?
Hmm. Hmm. Younger version
Or
of
to help
myself.
somebody level up their life, like someone out there and they just want to go to the next level, whatever that level is. Like, what would you tell them?
I can start so you can take a minute to think about yours. You are good enough. You are good enough. You may think you are nowhere near where you want to be, or there are people that are far ahead of you. You cannot compare yourself on day one to somebody else's day 1000. You are enough. If you have a goal, if you have a dream, if you have a vision, you can get to where you need to go. And you don't need to be anything other than who you are today, knowing that you are on a mission and that you have what it takes to become whoever it is that you want to be. Never think that you are less than, because that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if we're going to be any sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, let it be that you are successful, that you are worthy, and that you can do hard things.
I love that.
Can I curse on here?
No, don't curse.
You can do it if you want, but try to beat hers.
I can give you the censored version. I'll give you the censored version. Feel your stuff, understand your stuff, but don't. Oh wait, this actually doesn't work. No, it's got no. You don't lose your stuff. What?
Just send it.
Feel your shit, understand your shit, but don't lose your shit. So it's right understanding, like being okay with how you feel sometimes, understanding why you feel that way, and that'll help you to not blow everything up and make your life more difficult than it needs to be.
Beautiful. I've absolutely loved this conversation with both you, Michael, and Jess. I hope the best, most beautiful life that you guys can create together as you continue inspiring other people with your love letters and helping people understand and enjoy vegan food and helping men with what you do, Michael. I wish the best for you guys. And I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I know our audience is going to love listening back to this as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Scottie. This was awesome.
Scottie.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Season 2, and we hope that you enjoyed the content that we shared with you today. We're here to remind you that your family is your most important work on earth, help you feel better, and learn how to earn more income for your family. If you enjoyed this episode with Michael and Jess, please leave a positive review and share it with a friend. It's time to level up.